Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we're privileged to have with us Tim Sanders, and he is the one and only author and keynote speaker, and I'm sure that everyone on the broadcast today has read his book or heard of Tim speak. So, Tim, thank you so much for coming on to the program.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Hey, so recently I've had the privilege of interviewing guests, and there's been a kind of a recurring theme just, by coincidence on creating culture. So I definitely want to kind of start off with, how do you feel about creating culture in the organizational world we're in today, but also kind of intertwining in your, platform of love being the killer app?
Good question. I believe that whether you're just starting a company out or you work at a large enterprise, culture is critical. The only difference is when you're starting a company out, the first 10 or 15 hires set your culture, and it's really difficult to change it. If you work at a very big company, culture is usually at the divisional or departmental level. So anyway, culture is important because it creates the social operating system of an organization. Culture, in my view, is a conversation led by leaders about how we do things here successfully. And that conversation has a lot of cadence in the messaging. There's storytelling, there's ritual, but most importantly, there's action. We hire people, we fire people, we onboard people, we promote people based on whether they fit our culture. Now, when you ask yourself, okay, what is a culture then? It's a set of values and best practices. That's the best way to think about it, Mike. And what I believe is that if we put love, meaning we care about each other and we very much care about our customers and partners, if you put love as one of the key values of your organization, you're going to create a relationship-based culture. People are going to be more empathetic to each other. People are going to work more with each other on giving them coaching or also thinking about experience design from a human standpoint. And in my experience, I've seen a lot of organizations turn themselves around by injecting a value like culture or a value like love into their culture. In the book, Love is the Killer App, I share the story of when Tom Ward was hired to turn around Barton Protective Security. This is in Atlanta, a security guard company with really high turnover, really poor customer satisfaction marks. And this is exactly what he did. He changed the values. He changed the best practices. He changed the messaging. It was everywhere. It was on your security badge. It was in every meeting. It was on every memo that went out, and within a few years, he turned the company around in terms of the two things that mattered most: turnover, which dropped below an industry standard, and customer satisfaction, which soared off the charts. And that's an example of someone putting this to play.
Excellent, succinct answer. And one thought that pops into my mind when you mentioned that last example there is, I'm sure that there's a monetary aspect to, employee satisfaction going up and retention and all of those, because in corporations today, I'm sure that there's, some people that could put a true dollar figure to it, but I know that turnover is a big cost to an organization because you've lost someone, you have to onboard someone else, you have to pay, recruiters or whatever all that would be. And then there's also the, momentum or the opportunity cost change where, that position is vacated, and then it takes a little bit of time for someone to get up and running. So I think that empathy and love addition or injection to the company culture just has a lot of far-reaching benefits. Is that some of the things you've seen in organizations you've worked with as well?
Absolutely. So a way to think about it is this. The traditional metric for what it costs to replace somebody that leaves is 5 times annual salary. That's generally accepted. However, that's pre-social media. That's pre-review websites like Glassdoor, which is the Yelp for disgruntled employees. So I believe the cost to replace a disgruntled employee is twice as high. It's 10 times salary. Why? Because they have a platform now to talk about what a bad experience it was working for you, so your cost for candidates goes up dramatically. So that's why it's so important when you think about your culture and you pick your cultural type, that you pick a culture type that puts people first and considers them not only as human beings, but human beings with a megaphone. And love is a great selection here. One thing I'd say for the listeners about culture, because I've done a lot of research on this, is there's really 4 types of culture to choose from, okay? There is hierarchy. That means your goal is stability and control, right? So you see a lot of that, say, in military, older organizations. The second choice you have is what's called a market culture. A market culture is when you focus totally on being number 1 or number 2 in your space. So your total focus is on beating the competition. You benchmark everything against them. General Electric, Microsoft, good examples of market cultures. The third choice, and the one that I advocate for a service-oriented company, is they call it the clan culture. That's the family culture. That's a culture based on relationships. It's based on human decency. Corporations like, say, Nordstrom really are defined by having that relational culture. And then the fourth type of culture is called adhocracy. Adhocracy is basically the culture of continual innovation. It's all about breaking things. So Facebook and Google are a good example of that. And in winner-take-all technology-driven industries, sometimes that's a very good choice as well.
You brought up a really interesting point about Glassdoor, the Yelp for business, and the power that the consumer, brings to, or in that case, the employee brings to the equation, because what used to be, 5 times annual salary for turnover now can be way more, and actually you said double that, or 10 times, or what. The thing that I think that people don't realize is the longevity of some of those assets that just dangle out there online. And it's interesting. Right. I interviewed John Hall, the CEO of Influence & Co., and I'm reading his book now called Top of Mind, and he had an example in his book talking about this sales rep he brought on to their organization and poured a lot of money and training into them. He was a top producer. He stayed with them for about 4 years and then moved on to one of their partner vendors. And he recounts in the story that he felt bad because, wow, we invested so much, but he knew it was the best thing for this person, and he cared about him, and I forget what phrase he used, but he really showed good love and empathy, right? Well, what happened? What he said was, we kept paying for his personal development and his all of the things right up to the day he left, kind of left with a high five and a handshake, and it turned out that this employee now is just a wonderful advocate and brand advocate, and actually revenue generator still, because you parted on great terms. And on the flip side, if you didn't have that approach, the love is the killer app approach, you could have just cut that person off and really marred relationships, and those have some long-lasting ripples.
No, that's a great story. It's a great example. It reminds me of something Richard Branson once said. He was asked by someone, what if we spend a lot of money on training them and they leave? And he asked, what if we don't spend any money on training them and they stay? Yeah. Right? So I think one has to take the abundance mentality as a leader in an organization. You have to believe that if you invest in your people, they will pay it forward out of a sense of gratitude by being more engaged with the customer. And the research says this is true. They literally teach this in business school. It's called the people-customer model. The customer feels the love and the engagement from the person they're working with that you've invested in, and they pass it on to the company. And the way they do it, Mike, is they become more open to brand extensions, and they become more loyal to existing services. And it's a cycle, a virtuous cycle of business. But here's the trick. If you're going to practice this and you're going to say, okay, we really do care about our people, we're going to put them first, we're going to make heavy investments in making them better at what they do, you'd better tame your ego and you'd better manage your expectations. I think the real enemy of being generous in the long term is this ego that says, wait a minute, I put a lot of money into this dude. What am I getting out of it? That's not the point. The point is you invest in your ecosystem, you trust the system, and when certain talents fly away, you consider them alumni. Because sometimes with an employee, the ROI is not 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 on what you spend on training them. It's 500 to 1 or 1,000 to 1, right? So you see that in organizations. I experienced that myself. I mean, when I was working for Mark Cuban at broadcast.com, there were a few people that we hired and put some money into training on what was going on at the time with audio and video streaming. And when he sold that company, which had only been around for 3 years, for almost $6 billion to Yahoo, a huge part of the intellectual property was literally 4 or 5 engineers that he'd invested in. And sure, they got stock options, they made money, but if I drew on the back of a napkin what I think the ROI on them was, it was like 25,000 to 1. So we've got to be okay on losing a few hands at the table. And it is that spirit of letting go and assuming the best intentions that allows you to make the same decision that this gentleman made when that talent left, and then that person went on to be successful, influential, and also supportive of the business. It's probably ROIing just on the value of referral today, I bet you.
And it's just the right thing to do. You know, I mean, you can put numbers to all kinds of things, but at the end of the day, you know, if you see him at the movie theater the next weekend, you want to smile, high five, and see how they're doing. So I think that comes into play as well. You know.
Exactly, and you know, the right thing to do has been a hard thing to do in business because we keep, you know, telling ourselves, you know, we got a company to run, we got bills to pay, we got investors to please. And, you know, that was the real breakthrough for me when I wrote Love is the Killer App, is that the idea, Mike, that nice, smart leaders succeed. Notice I injected the word smart into that equation because we must be intelligent about who we bring onto our company. We have to hire them because they mirror our values. The values we choose must differentiate us in the market in a way customers care about. When we bring them on, then we have to be very intelligent about how much we invest in them and when we invest in them. And then I think as we do it over and over and over again, we can do the right thing consistently and it will scale. And if you take a look at the Fortune 100 best companies to work for list, I can just show you company after company like SAS Institute, where being good to people is a science and a driver of business success if one puts their mind to it.
And I think that a potential downfall of viewing that as a science is you view it as a checklist and a to-do item and, you know, oh, I need to be good to people, so let me do X. And you plop the gift on the desk thinking, yay, I gave them a gift. And they're like, well, where was the feeling in that? So I think that you have to really make sure that it is an art and a science, right?
Yeah, I do agree with you. I mean, I guess what I mean is that there's some process to it, right? So in my view, if you're going to show love to somebody in business, what I mean by that is that you're going to do whatever you can to promote their success in an organization or in their career. So I think the way to approach that art and science is to say, first of all, we're going to share knowledge. We're going to be mentors. We're going to be educators. We're going to invest in someone's capabilities. And the second thing we're going to do is we're going to create matching relationships. We're going to introduce them to other people. We're going to share our community of relationships with them because that's going to really enable them to move forward. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to lead with compassion. I believe that one of the greatest challenges today for a leader of any company, big or small, is a design challenge. And I don't mean customer experience design. We talk about that a lot. I mean employee experience design. We have to think about the emotional experiences they're going to go through from the beginning of their employment to the very end. And when we make decisions that affect operations and human resources and processes, I always put the employee experience right next to the customer experience as the center of design decision-making, right? You see sometimes in organizations where they don't consider the employee experience, they consider the customer experience, and they put employees in very bad situations.
Yeah.
And it drives turnover. And so I think that's a new challenge for the leader. But if you become good at thinking about things like a designer, you can create an outstanding place to work. And a really good example of that is what Google has done with the Googleplex. When they were very young and they were still just right out of Stanford, Sergey and Larry took a trip to Cary, North Carolina, because they'd read about this company Dr. Jim Goodnight founded called SAS Institute. It had less than 4% turnover. It was the second most productive company in the world. It was the richest privately held company in the world. And everybody was doing stories on it. I mean, 60 Minutes did a puff piece on what a great place it was to work. And so they read about this campus and all the stuff. So Larry and Sergey, they spent like a month in a couple of trips, a month on that campus, just curiosity. And what they did is they understood all the elements that go into building the perfect talent trap. And that's exactly what they did a few years later after they went public and had the money to build the Googleplex. So they took that idea and ran with it.
Because, as many people have said, success leaves clues. So if you can go find that success and then model it, that's wonderful. I mean, I love that example. And now everyone has got their attention on the Googleplex, and now everyone says, look how Tony Hsieh and look how Google does it. We need to do the same thing. Hey, so I know you're. I just think that's so incredible how now things have shifted, and maybe even in the back of their mind on the return trip home from that so many years ago, they were probably going, we're going to be the one on 60 Minutes, and we're going to be the one that people come and tour our campus, right?
You said something you all want to build on. You said success leaves clues, and I want to just talk about that for a second for everybody listening. I think what will make you a more abundant thinker, what will give you the confidence to be good to people by default and okay when it occasionally doesn't work out, is to be voracious in reading. Success leaves clues. So read books about people who become successful in a space you're doing business in, and you will find the clues. The more clues you find, the more confident you get. The more confident you get, the easier it is to let go, and that makes you that sharing type of person. And by the way, if you read enough, you will find all the clues that do suggest that the best way to be successful is to create a success path for other people. Trust the system that they'll pay it forward.
I love it. And speaking of reading, looking at your book page, I wonder, do you feel like looking back, there's a recurring theme that runs through all of your books that could be like a connector? And I'll propose this and see if there's any connection or validity in this. Love is the killer app, so we've been talking about that. But deal storming, the secret weapon that can solve your toughest sales challenges, I bet love plays and empathy plays a factor in that. And Today We're Rich, harnessing the power of total competence. I bet empathy and treating people right plays into that. As you were writing your books, do you find that there becomes that foundation that then you're branching off of these separate ideas, but there becomes that kind of that recurring theme?
Yeah, here's the recurring theme. Build relationships long before you need them. Build relationships by giving and trusting other people. Build relationships by assuming they're operating under the best intentions until proven otherwise. From Love is the Killer app all the way through deal storming, that's what I keep talking about. Connect with people whenever possible through generosity, because they become a collaborative web for you. They become your stronghold, and that they give you more meaning and more confidence in your business life.
Well, speaking of generosity, I am grateful and thank you for your time today, and we could probably talk for hours on end, so let's wrap up with, if people want to implement the Success Leaves Clues and read books that you have written from your experiences and learning from your success in the industry, what's the best way that they can reach out and read some of your work?
Well, you're going to like this. I've created a custom URL just for your audience. I've got some stuff we've got on that page for them to download. They're going to read an excerpt from Love is the Killer app. And that URL is timsanders.com/IE. So that's timsanders.com/IE, as in influential entrepreneurs.
Love it, Tim. Thank you so much for your time and the custom URL. I'll make sure that's in the show notes, and wish you all the best, and thanks for coming on the show today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.